There's a story my town never talks about. Not in public, not in hushed tones at family dinners, not even in the kind of creepy campfire way you'd expect from a place with a dark history. It's as if the entire thing was surgically removed from the town's memory. But I know it happened, and I can't stop asking myself why I had to be the one to remember. Back in 1981, kids started vanishing from a dingy little arcade on the edge of Main Street. No explanations, no trails, just kids who'd gone in with pockets full of quarters and never came out. Ask anyone who was there back then, and you'll get the same thing: blank stares, nervous laughter, quick changes of subject. If you push harder, you'll hear the same excuse. You must be confusing it with something else. That never happened, but I've seen the proof. I've seen the yellowing newspaper clippings, the headlines hastily blacked out with thick marker. I've heard the brittle cassette tapes of interviews that weren't supposed to survive. I've touched the cracked photographs that no one wanted in their family albums. And I've seen the machine. It wasn't like the Pac-Man or Galaga cabinets that everyone crowded around in those days. No bright artwork, no flashy branding, no goofy characters inviting you to play. Just a plain black cabinet with a screen that hummed faintly even when it wasn't plugged in. Its controls were stiff and wrong, like they weren't made for human hands. And the game itself, if you can call it that, was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. That's where the trouble began. They said if you played long enough, you'd start to feel strange. Your stomach would tighten, your thoughts would blur, and something in the back of your skull would begin to itch, like a door creaking open in a part of your brain you weren't meant to use. Some kids swore they saw shapes moving outside the screen, reflections that didn't belong to them. Others said they heard voices through the static, whispering their names. And then, those kids stopped showing up to school, stopped being seen at the corner store, stopped existing. I wish I could tell you I didn't get involved, that I was smart enough to leave the rumors alone, that I looked the other way and went on with my life. But curiosity is a parasite, and once it's inside you, it eats until nothing's left. The first time I heard about the machine, I thought it was just another small town legend, like the haunted house on the hill or the ghost in the railroad tunnel. But when I stumbled across an old box of files in the library basement, the kind of files you're not supposed to find, I realized the truth was darker, sharper, and much more deliberate. Someone had tried very hard to bury it, and someone else wanted me to dig it up. That's why I'm telling you this now, because I think the machine isn't finished. Because the last time I dreamed, I saw its screen flicker on again, and I heard that low hum coming from somewhere too close. And because the more I remember, the more I realize, I wasn't just a witness. I was there. And if you keep listening, you'll understand why some games aren't meant to be played. Before I can explain what the machine really was, you need to understand the world it appeared in. It was 1981, and for kids like me, the arcade was more than just a building. It was the pulse of the town. Back then, the glow of neon lights was magnetic. Even from half a block away, you could hear the chiptune jingles, the thump of buttons being pounded, and the laughter, loud, careless, unstoppable. Walking through those doors felt like stepping into another universe. Rows of cabinets lined the walls, each one fighting for attention with garish artwork and flashing screens. Pac-Man chomping endlessly, Galaga's alien ships darting in impossible formations, Donkey Kong's barrel-throwing chaos. It was noisy, crowded, alive. Quarters clinked like treasure, and kids wore them on shoelace chains around their necks, proof they belonged there. The air was thick with the smell of buttered popcorn, grease from the pizza oven, and the faint electric burn of overheated machines. Every game had its king, and every king had challengers lined up, sweaty palms clutching coins. To win meant respect. To lose meant stepping aside, watching your quarter vanish into a slot, swallowed forever. That was our normal. That was our sanctuary. I still remember the faces. Tommy, who claimed he could beat Galaga on one life. Jenny, whose laugh could drown out a dozen arcade cabinets. Mark, always hustling, always finding another way to score free tokens. They were loud, bright, unstoppable kids. And me? I was right there with them, quarters jangling in my pocket, desperate to prove I belonged. The adults didn't get it. To them, arcades were noisy caves where kids wasted time and money. But to us, they were arenas, worlds we could control. In those games, the monsters could be beaten, the mazes could be solved, and every wrong move could be fixed with another coin. Real life wasn't like that. Looking back now, I realize how fragile it all was. How quickly joy can curdle into dread. But in 1981, the fear hadn't arrived yet. All we knew was color and sound and competition. All we cared about was chasing high scores and seeing our initials carved into glowing leaderboards. I can still hear it. The way the place roared on a Friday night. Kids pressed shoulder to shoulder, music blaring from the jukebox, soda cans hissing open. I can see the arcade owner, Mr. Dawson, leaning against the counter with his permanent scowl. He pretended to hate us, but you could tell he liked the chaos. Business was good. Quarters meant cash, and the machines never stopped eating. That night, the night everything changed, started like any other. A warm summer evening, sweat-sticking shirts to our backs, the arcade bursting with noise and life. Tommy swearing he'd finally hit 1,000,000 points. Jenny daring us to beat her Pac-Man run. Mark slipping me a free token with that sly grin of his. Nothing about it screamed danger. Nothing about it warned us that we were brushing shoulders with something we weren't meant to see. The machine was already there, tucked in the corner, almost invisible among the glowing giants. No one was looking at it. No one noticed it humming softly to itself, as if waiting. But we should have noticed. Because later, when we looked back, we couldn't understand how it had appeared. None of us remembered it being delivered. No one remembered the movers or the truck. It was just there. And the thing about the arcade back then, we knew every cabinet by heart. Every joystick nick, every chipped sticker, every burnt-out bulb. Nothing new came in without the whole town buzzing about it. But this one, silent arrival. No fanfare. At first, we ignored it. Why would we play something that didn't even have a name on the screen? Why waste a quarter when Donkey Kong was calling our names? But even then, something about it was pulling at the edges of our minds. I wish I could tell you we walked past it, that we never gave it another thought. But that would be a lie. Because before the night was over, someone slipped a coin into its slot. And that was the moment the normal ended. I don't remember who was the first to actually play it. That's the strange part. Normally, in an arcade, everyone remembers who broke the ice with a new game, who got bragging rights, who set the first high score. But with this one, it's like the memory's been scraped out of my head, leaving only smudges. What I do remember is the sound, not the cheerful jingles of Pac-Man or the 8-bit explosions of Galaga. This was lower, almost like a heartbeat buried under static, a dull thrum that settled in your chest and made your ribs buzz. Even standing near the cabinet, you could feel it pulsing. The screen didn't show a title, just shifting shapes, lines that bent into impossible angles, colors that bled into each other like bruises. If you stared too long, your eyes watered. The controls were wrong too. Instead of a joystick and 2 buttons, it had this strange rotary dial that turned too smoothly, like it was greased, and 2 buttons that didn't click so much as sync, like you were pressing into soft flesh. Mark was the first to laugh about it. "Looks like some bootleg junk," he said, jangling the coins on his necklace. "Bet it eats your quarter and crashes." But he was already feeding it a coin. The screen flashed, swallowing the quarter with a noise that wasn't the usual cheerful ding. It sounded more like a breath. The shapes sharpened, twisted into something almost recognizable. Corridors, maybe? A maze, but warped, shifting as you looked at it. "Doesn't even make sense," Jenny muttered, leaning over Mark's shoulder. "Where's the score? Where's the timer?" Mark just smirked. "Don't need one. Gonna beat it anyway." But as he spun the dial, his smirk faded. His eyes narrowed. His lips pressed tight. The shapes on the screen weren't following any rules. The corridors bent in on themselves, walls folding, floors tilting. Mark kept twisting the dial, faster and faster, like he couldn't stop. "Yo, chill," Tommy said, grabbing his arm. "It's just a game." Mark jerked back, snapping at him. "Don't touch me." His voice cracked, high, panicked. Then, quieter. "I almost had it. You ruined it." We laughed nervously. "That's what you did when things got weird," you laughed. But it didn't feel right. There was sweat dripping down Mark's temple, even though the arcade was freezing with its rattling AC. His hands shook, and when he finally let go of the dial, his knuckles were white. I saw something," he muttered. "What?" Jenny asked. He didn't answer, just stared at the black cabinet like it had whispered his name. The next kid to play wasn't dared, wasn't pushed. They just stepped forward, like they'd been waiting, like the machine had already chosen them. One by one, we all tried, and the same thing happened every time. At first it felt clunky, pointless. Shapes chasing shapes, rules you couldn't figure out. But then, somewhere around the third or fourth turn, you'd feel it click in your brain. Not like learning, more like remembering. Like the game was showing you something you'd forgotten. Something you weren't supposed to know. That's when the dizziness started. Your stomach would twist, your vision would blur, and the buzzing in your chest grew louder, like the machine's heartbeat was syncing with your own. For me, it was like the floor beneath my shoes tilted, like I was about to fall straight through. I told myself I imagined it, that it was just motion sickness or staring too long at warped graphics. But when I pulled away, Ginny grabbed my arm. Her face was pale. "You saw it too, right?" she whispered. "Saw what?" "The thing behind the walls." I wanted to ask what she meant, but the words jammed in my throat. Because I knew exactly what she was talking about. There was a shape. Not on the screen, not exactly. More like behind it. Something that moved when the lines shifted. Something watching. We didn't talk about it after. Not right away. Kids in the 80s didn't admit to being scared, not in front of each other. So we laughed it off, shoved quarters into Pac-Man, tried to chase the unease away with pizza and soda. But later that night, Tommy didn't show up to school, and none of us ever saw him again. The cops said he ran away. His parents were frantic, but the official line was simple. He packed a bag, slipped out, vanished on his own. But I knew better. We all did. Because the last place we saw him was right there, standing in front of that black cabinet. His hands still trembling. His face pale. His eyes locked on the screen like something inside it had finally convinced him to step closer. And the next day, he was gone. I wish I could tell you I walked away from it then. That losing Tommy was enough to make me swear off the machine. But when you're a kid, grief and curiosity get tangled. Fear and fascination become the same thing. So I kept going back. And eventually, I put another coin in. After Tommy vanished, the arcade wasn't the same. On the surface, it looked unchanged. Kids still lined up at Pac-Man. The pizza oven still smoked. Mr. Dawson still scowled at us from behind the counter. But underneath, there was a weight in the air, like the static just before a storm. Conversations dropped off when Tommy's name came up. His parents plastered missing posters around town, their edges curling in the summer heat, but no one wanted to look at them for long. And through it all, the machine waited. Every time I walked into the arcade, my eyes went straight to it. I told myself I wasn't going to play. I told myself it was stupid, dangerous, cursed. But that dial, the way it gleamed under the flickering fluorescent light, pulled at me. It was like the machine was patient, confident that sooner or later, everyone would come back to it. Ginny lasted the longest. She swore off the place after Tommy disappeared, but a week later, she was back. I remember the night because I tried to stop her. "Don't," I whispered, grabbing her wrist as she moved toward the cabinet. Her eyes looked hollow, shadowed. "I just need to see if it happens again," she said. "Jenny." She yanked her hand free. "What if he's not gone? What if he's just in there?" Before I could argue, she was feeding the machine a coin. That sound again, the breath, the hum. The shapes twisted. Jenny's hands moved fast, her face lit by the screen's shifting glow. At first she looked determined, focused. Then her lips parted. Her breathing slowed. Her pupils widened. "Jenny," I asked. She didn't answer. Her body swayed slightly, like she was standing at the edge of a cliff and leaning forward. Mark grabbed her shoulder and shook her. "Snap out of it." For a second, she didn't move, and then she stumbled back, gasping like she'd been underwater. Her eyes darted wildly, but when she looked at us, she didn't seem to see us. "What happened?" I demanded. "There's doors," she whispered. "Not hallways. Doors." I almost opened one. We never found out what she meant, because she refused to play again. But she wasn't the same afterward. She stopped joking, stopped laughing. Sometimes I'd catch her staring into space, her fingers twitching as if she was still turning that dial. That's how it was with all of us. Even when we weren't near the machine, it followed us. I'd dream about the corridors, black walls bending, doors glowing faintly, always just out of reach. Sometimes I'd wake up with the taste of metal in my mouth, like I'd bitten down on a coin in my sleep. Mark got it the worst. He started skipping school, spending entire days at the arcade. I'd walk in and see him hunched over the cabinet, eyes bloodshot, spinning that dial until his wrists popped. He didn't talk much anymore, except to mutter about getting further this time. When Mr. Dawson tried to pull him away, Mark snapped at him, voice shaking with fury. "He's not playing." Dawson muttered to me once, his voice low. "He's being played." I didn't know what he meant then, but now I do. The machine wasn't just a game. It was a hook, a lure. Every time we played, it pulled something from us, time, energy, pieces of our minds, and replaced them with something else, something we couldn't name. And here's the worst part. Despite all the fear, despite Tommy vanishing, despite Jenny's haunted eyes and Mark's obsession, I couldn't stay away either. I told myself it was for answers, that if I played long enough, I'd understand what happened to Tommy, that maybe I could even bring him back. But the truth was simpler and uglier. I wanted the feeling again, that pull, that strange sensation of doors opening in my mind. The second time I played, I lasted longer. The corridors shifted, folding in on themselves, but I wasn't confused this time. My hands knew what to do. The dial spun, the buttons sank beneath my fingers, and the dizziness came faster. My heartbeat matched the hum. My vision tunneled. And then I saw it. The door. Jenny hadn't been lying. It was there, faint and pulsing at the edge of the maze. Every time I tried to reach it, the walls bent away. But I knew if I just kept turning the dial, if I just pushed a little harder, I could open it. That's when I heard my name. Not out loud. Not from anyone standing near me. It was inside my head, threading through the static. A voice whispering from behind the door. "Come closer. You're almost there." I don't remember pulling away. All I know is that when I opened my eyes, my friends were staring at me like I'd done something horrible. "You were gone," Mark said. "I was right here," I argued. "No," Jenny's voice trembled. "Your eyes, they weren't yours." I laughed it off, but deep down, I knew she was right. For a few seconds, I hadn't been myself. And even worse, I wanted to go back. By the end of that summer, the machine wasn't just our secret anymore. At first, only a handful of us knew about it. Me, Jenny, Mark, and a few others. But word spreads fast in a small town, especially when kids start disappearing. Tommy was only the beginning. A girl from the next neighborhood vanished a week later. She was last seen at the arcade, quarters jangling in her pocket. Then a boy who'd never even been inside before suddenly became obsessed, spending every afternoon glued to the machine. He stopped showing up at school. His parents said he ran off. One by one, kids went missing. The police wrote it off as teenage rebellion, runaways, kids being kids. But we knew better. Every missing face had been lit by that same shifting glow, the cabinet's pale light washing over them, as if it were erasing them from the inside out. And with every disappearance, the town grew louder. Parents stormed the arcade, demanding answers. Mr. Dawson swore he didn't know anything, said the machine must have been delivered by mistake, some distributor's error. He tried to call the company listed on the back, but the number didn't exist. No paperwork, no invoice, nothing. The machine had no past. That only fueled the whispers. Some said it came from the government, that it was a secret experiment testing mind control on kids. Others swore it was satanic, a cursed object smuggled into town to corrupt us. A few even claimed it was haunted, built from parts of TVs and radios that once belonged to dead soldiers. Whatever the story, one thing was clear: nobody could stop playing. Kids who swore they hated video games lined up in front of it. Older teens cut class to take turns. Even adults sometimes wandered close, staring a little too long before shaking themselves and walking away. The panic wasn't just about the disappearances. It was about the hunger. You could feel it in the air, that sense that the machine wasn't just a game, but a mouth, opening wider every day, waiting to swallow more of us. The arcade, once noisy and bright, became a place of dread. Parents forbade their kids from going, but that only made it worse. Because sneaking out to play made it feel dangerous, forbidden, irresistible. I remember one night in particular. The place was packed, but no one was laughing. The sound of Pac-Man's cheerful chomp felt hollow, fake. Jenny sat slumped against the wall, staring at the machine with glassy eyes, her hands twitching like she was still turning the dial in her sleep. Mark was at the cabinet again, sweat dripping down his forehead, muttering under his breath like a priest reciting prayers. And then it happened. The lights flickered. Not just in the arcade. The whole block dimmed, as if the machine had sucked the electricity straight out of the wires. For a moment, the only glow in the room was its shifting screen, bending and twisting in patterns none of us could describe. When the power came back, 2 kids were gone. Just gone. Their friends swore they'd been standing there a second before, watching the screen. Now there was nothing. No scream, no struggle, just empty space. That was the night panic truly hit. Parents dragged their kids out screaming. The police barricaded the arcade. Reporters showed up from neighboring towns, their cameras flashing as they shoved microphones in Mr. Dawson's face. He shouted at them, cursed them, told them he was shutting down for good. But the next night, the arcade was open again. Not because Dawson wanted it, because he couldn't stop it. He tried to will the cabinet out the back, but it wouldn't budge. He unplugged it, but the screen kept glowing. He even took a hammer to it, swung so hard the walls shook, but the hammer bounced back like he'd hit solid stone. The machine didn't dent, didn't scratch, didn't even shake. And every time he tried to fight it, kids showed up anyway. They said they felt drawn there. Some swore they heard whispers in their dreams, calling them by name. The disappearances escalated. Every week, another face vanished from our classrooms, from our streets, from our lives. By August, people weren't whispering anymore. They were shouting. Churches warned of possession. Town hall meetings devolved into screaming matches. Parents accused each other of hiding their missing children. The mayor promised action, but delivered nothing. The cops patrolled the arcade, but they never went near the cabinet themselves. And me? I kept dreaming of the doors. Every night, I saw them. Dozens of glowing thresholds, some cracked open, some sealed tight. I'd reach for them, but my hands never touched the handles. Something always pulled me back. Except once. One night, I got close. Close enough to hear what was behind the door. A chorus of voices, all familiar. All crying out from the other side. Tommy was one of them. That's when I stopped thinking of the machine as a game. It wasn't a machine at all. It was a passage, and it was opening wider every day. The summer of 1981 was when the town began to unravel. But for me, it was also when the truth started to sharpen into focus. For weeks, the machine had been nothing but questions: where it came from, what it wanted, why it fed on us. But slowly, painfully, it began to show me pieces of its design. Not all at once. Never all at once. It gave me glimpses, like dangling bait just close enough for me to lunge. It started with the dreams. By then, I was dreaming every night. The corridors were clearer now, less like warped lines and more like stone tunnels. Wet, slick, endless. The walls pulsed as if they were alive, and from the ceiling hung wires like veins. Each time I walked deeper, I saw the doors again. But now, some of them were cracked open, and shadows pressed against the gaps, whispering my name. "Help us! Let us out! Come closer!" The voices were always familiar. Sometimes they sounded like Tommy, sometimes Jenny, sometimes kids who had vanished weeks ago. But other times, the voices didn't belong to anyone I knew. They were older, heavier, voices soaked in centuries of hunger. The more I listened, the more I realized the machine wasn't showing me random mazes. It was mapping something, a place, a realm hidden just beyond the edges of our world. And the doors? They weren't metaphors. They were real. One night, I pushed myself further. I stayed at the arcade long after closing, slipping in through the back when Dawson locked up. The place was dark except for the cabinet's glow. The air felt thick, like walking into a church before a funeral. I fed it a coin. The corridors unfolded instantly, no warm-up this time. My hands spun the dial faster than I thought possible, and the dizziness didn't scare me anymore. It felt almost welcome. The hum synced with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell if I was alive or if the machine was pumping my blood for me. That's when I saw it. At the center of the maze was a chamber. Unlike the shifting walls, this room stayed constant, circular, vast, lit by a sickly green glow. And in the middle stood something like a pillar, black and endless, with wires sprouting out of it like roots. It wasn't a part of the game. It was the core. As I turned the dial, the pillar pulsed, and I understood. The machine wasn't just for us. It wasn't built for entertainment. It was a vessel, a doorway. The corridors weren't levels, they were veins. The doors weren't puzzles, they were locks. And behind those locks was something alive, something waiting. I tore myself away from the cabinet, my head spinning, my throat dry. Jenny was waiting outside. She had followed me, worried I'd lose myself the way Mark had. "What did you see?" she asked. I could barely get the words out. It's not a game. It's feeding it." Her face went pale. "Feeding what?" I shook my head. I didn't know what to call it. But the truth was there, coiled in my gut. Every kid who vanished wasn't gone. They were consumed. Pulled through the doors, their voices trapped in that place, fueling whatever lay behind the pillar. Jenny clutched my arm. "Then we have to stop it." I wanted to believe we could, but the more I thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. How do you kill something that doesn't come from here? How do you fight a doorway? Mark, meanwhile, was past saving. By August, he wasn't even pretending to be normal. He lived at the arcade, sleeping in corners, surviving on leftover pizza. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, but when he looked at the machine, he lit up like it was the sun itself. "It's showing me things," he whispered one night when I tried to drag him away. His voice was cracked, but filled with awe. "It's bigger than us. Bigger than this town. It's been here before." "What do you mean?" I asked. He grinned, teeth yellowed. "It's ancient. Older than the games. Older than the wires. They built the cabinet to contain it. But it's not from here. It wants out." That word, contain, sank into me like a stone. Maybe the cabinet wasn't a mistake. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe someone had built it to trap the thing, to hold it just long enough. And we were the idiots feeding it, unlocking it, turning its prison into a key. The town tried everything. They shut the arcade down. Kids broke in anyway. They posted cops outside. The cops left after hearing the hum. They even tried burning the place. I was there that night, watching the flames lick at the building, smoke curling into the stars. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe it would end here. But in the morning, the arcade was still standing. The roof was gone, the walls blackened, the machines melted into heaps of plastic and metal. But in the corner, untouched, sat the cabinet. Its screen still glowing, its dial still shining. That's when panic turned into despair. The whispers in town shifted. It wasn't just fear of losing kids anymore. It was resignation. Some parents pulled their families out of town. Others turned to prayer. A few even started talking about sacrifices, as if giving the machine what it wanted might protect the rest of us. And through it all, the disappearances grew faster. One a week turned into 2, then 3. Then whole groups of kids gone at once, vanishing like smoke in front of the screen. The final piece of the puzzle came in September. I was walking home late when I passed the old library. Its windows were boarded, the building condemned years earlier, but inside I saw a light flickering. I don't know why I went in. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe the machine wanted me there. In the basement, I found boxes of old newspapers, articles from towns I'd never heard of. And in those pages, I saw it, stories of other disappearances, other arcades, other machines. 1981 wasn't the first time. It had happened in the 70s, the 60s, even earlier. Always the same pattern. A strange cabinet arrives, kids vanish, towns panic. The machine is destroyed, or so people thought, and then, years later, it surfaces again somewhere new. It wasn't an accident. It was a cycle. The machine wasn't here to entertain us. It wasn't here to scare us. It was here to harvest us, to open the doors, one town at a time, until finally, whatever was behind them could step through. And we were almost done feeding it. That night, for the first time, I wasn't just afraid. I was furious, because now I understood its purpose. The machine wasn't a predator. It wasn't even a monster. It was a key, and the lock was almost open. The night it all came to a head, the air felt different. Heavy, charged, like the town itself knew what was coming. By then, half my friends were gone. Mark had all but disappeared into the machine, his body alive, but his mind somewhere else. Jenny barely spoke anymore, her eyes always fixed on a point just past you, like she was listening to whispers none of us could hear. And me? I couldn't run from it anymore. The dreams had reached a fever pitch, doors slamming, voices screaming, the black pillars splitting open. I knew if I didn't face it, the whole town would vanish. Maybe the whole world. So I went back, alone. The arcade was empty, silent but for the hum of the cabinet. Every other machine was dead, their screens cracked and dark. The air reeked of burnt plastic and ozone. Yet in the corner, untouched, the machine glowed, waiting. As I stepped closer, I saw him, Mark. He was slumped against the cabinet, skin ashen, eyes glassy. But his hands were still moving, weakly turning the dial, over and over. "Mark," I whispered. He looked up at me, and for a moment I thought I saw my friend again. Then his lips curled into a smile that wasn't his. "It's open," he rasped. "It's finally open." Before I could answer, the machine's screen shifted. The maze dissolved, replaced by a single image, a door. Massive, pulsing with light, cracked open just enough for shadows to spill through. The voices surged, hundreds of them, screaming and pleading, overlapping in a storm of sound. But beneath them was another voice, deeper, heavier, vibrating in my bones. Step through. I should have run, but I didn't. I fed the machine my last quarter and gripped the dial. The hum grew louder, matching my heartbeat, my breath, my every thought. The walls of the arcade faded, swallowed by the corridors I knew too well. Only this time, I wasn't walking. I was being pulled. The door loomed ahead, wider now, light searing through its cracks. The voices on the other side grew frantic. Tommy's voice, Jenny's, even Mark's, all begging me to stop, to turn back. But the deeper voice cut through them all, commanding, relentless. "Open it. Let me through." My hands moved faster than I intended, the dial spinning wildly under my palms. The buttons sank deeper, softer, until it felt like I was pushing straight into flesh. The door swelled, shuddering, its hinges groaning like bones breaking. For a moment, I saw what lay beyond the crack. It wasn't a room. It wasn't even a place. It was an endless void, filled with shapes too large to comprehend. Eyes the size of billboards, teeth stretching into infinity. The sense of something ancient, ravenous, patient. That's when I realized the truth. The machine wasn't the door. I was. Every time we played, it wasn't about unlocking locks. It was about reshaping us, molding our minds into handles that could turn. We weren't the players. We were the keys. And I was the last one it needed. The hum rose into a roar. My vision blurred. My fingers locked on the dial. Then a hand grabbed mine. Jenny. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, but her grip was strong. Don't, she begged. Don't give it what it wants. I tried to answer, but my voice wasn't mine anymore. The deeper voice spoke through me, booming in my skull. We are already here. You cannot stop us. Jenny's eyes hardened. Then I'll stop you. She yanked me backward with a strength I didn't know she had. The dial snapped under our hands, sparking violently. The screen screamed. A sound, not an image, as the corridors twisted into chaos. The door slammed shut with a thunderous crack, the voices wailing in fury. And just like that, the arcade went dark. When I opened my eyes, the machine was gone. Not broken, not burned. Gone. Only an empty patch of floor remained, dustless, untouched. Mark was slumped lifeless beside it. Jenny sobbed quietly, clutching my hand as if to anchor me to reality. The hum was gone. For the first time all summer, there was silence. But silence doesn't mean safety. Because even now, years later, I can still feel it. The pull, the hunger, the unfinished promise. The door didn't vanish. It just closed. And doors can always be opened again. When the machine vanished, the town tried to move on. The arcade was gutted and boarded, left to rot until the weeds swallowed it. Parents told themselves their children had run away, that they'd start fresh somewhere else. The police filed their reports, packed away their boxes, and pretended the case was closed. But I knew better. So did Jenny. We never spoke of that night out loud, but we carried it with us in silence. The hum that still echoed in our bones, the voices that still whispered when the world grew quiet. Mark's body was buried, but I don't think he ever truly came back. Part of him was still behind that door. Maybe all of us were. Years have passed. I've built a life far from that town, far from the ruins of the arcade. But every so often, I hear it again. A faint hum under the static of a TV. A flicker in the corner of an old screen. A dream where the corridors stretch on forever and the doors glow, waiting for my hands to turn the dial. And when I wake, I know the truth. Closing the machine didn't destroy it. It only delayed it. Because the machine has always been out there. Moving from place to place, year to year, feeding, waiting. Somewhere, right now, another town is hearing the hum. Another kid is dropping a coin into its slot. Another door is opening. I tell myself I should warn them. Write it down. Send it out. But maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe the machine wants this story told. Maybe that's how it spreads.